The Queen returns. Iceland Annie looks to reclaim her crown in Europe. Laura Horvath hopes to get one step closer to a CrossFit Games championship, and familiar names tried to recapture past magic. We preview the Women's Europe semifinal next. Hi, everybody. Welcome inside the Talking Elite Fitness Studios. I'm Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez as we break down the women's side of the Europe semifinal. And the one word that comes to mind when I look at this field is loaded.
Yeah, you look across the board, 16 women in total have individual CrossFit Games experience. But beyond that, you look past just a few of the really big names. I think there's a ton of athletes with just maybe 1-2 years experience. And I really think that this could be a kind of watershed moment for the Europe women's field looking forward, given some of the age and experiences of some of the athletes.
The Europe semifinal will be held week 3 in Berlin, Germany. There are 11 qualifying spots on the line for the women and the men, and then 10 teams will be moving on from this semifinal to the CrossFit Games in Madison, Wisconsin. So the big story, or one of the big stories on the women's side, is the return of Annie Thorisdottir to individual competition. And it's crazy to think about this, but she first showed up at the CrossFit Games in 2009, and I don't think anybody would be shocked if she got to Madison and contended for a podium spot.
Yeah, she's going to be competing against an athlete in Lucy McGonigal that was probably still in diapers when she first showed up to the CrossFit Games. And obviously there's a ton of hype around Annie making her comeback, but I really feel like this is just a small step in a bigger process for her, because you look at when Annie does her best, she excels at playing the long game. The last 2 times she podiumed at the games, the focus wasn't qualifying. She finished 3rd at regionals or semifinals this year. At this stage, there really is no pressure for her because she's been through it a million times before. And she's one of those athletes that gets better the longer the competition is. 2021, 4 of her top 5 finishes came in the final 4 events at the CrossFit Games. On the final day of competition the last 3 years at the Games, she was an average finish of 3.4. So I don't think there needs to be as much pressure to perform at this stage of the competition. Just perform well, get to the Games.
Annie's a great story, and I know a lot of people will be watching her when she competes, but probably not the favorite. I think Laura Horvath has to be the favorite here. Finished on the Games podium 3 times, but probably gets a lot more, I don't want to say blame, but a lot more focus on the one weakness than all the strengths that she has.
Yeah, and I really think that's kind of an oversight as far as just the general consensus about Laura as an athlete, because you really look at, she's one of the few athletes that has proven time and time again in the absence of Tia Toomey, or even sometimes, with some of the top competition, that she has the ability to win. Go back to this year even. Quarterfinals. She actually beat Mal O'Brien in 4 of the 5 quarterfinal tests. And she doesn't get enough credit for building a level of fitness that can account for that singular weakness that people like to harp on. Since 2020, she has been able to win 7 competitions or competition stages in that time frame. That just doesn't happen unless you're one of the absolute best in the sport and have a skill set that really performs well in a variety of tests. That to boot with 3 CrossFit Games medals around her neck, I think she is undoubtedly the favorite. I expect her to dominate.
It's hard to pick out of the huge group of veterans a couple people that you're going to be to focus on, but I'm actually going to ask you to do that. I mean, you got McQuaid, Turi Helgadottir, Gabby Migala, Freyova Dahlstrom, you got Sigmundsdottir coming back, but who will you be watching most closely at the semifinal?
Well, we're going to start with a kind of a bestie rivalry between someone I think can actually push Laura on most of these events, and that's Gabby Migala. Gabby probably made one of the biggest changes for any of the top athletes in this past offseason. Leaving Mallorca, where she was living and training, not being with the program anymore, and opting to just go kind of her own way with her boyfriend, Christoph Horvath. And Gabby isn't without a few things that she's been working on herself, whether that's upper body pulling, things like legless rope climbs, but her broad capacity and engine across the other tests is just phenomenal. She's one of the few people that can hang with Laura Horvath. And lost in all that, I think, was a marquee win at the Games at the Capitol. And then someone that I think excels at this stage of competition, specifically based on the last couple seasons, that's Jacqueline Dahlstrom. 2021, she finished 2nd, just 20 points behind Kristen Holte when Holte was really at her peak. 2022, strength and depth. She doesn't get credit for winning that competition. I was there calling it on the floor. She was the most complete athlete that I saw at that competition. She is much better at some of the inside the gym stuff that you see on a regular basis and things that show up at this semifinal or formerly regional stage. And I think with her skill in weightlifting and gymnastics, it's going to play really nicely here.
Sarah Sigmundsdottir, despite the fact that she has not had the success that she had early in her career, is still a crowd favorite. She's fun to watch compete. But what are the expectations for her heading into this semifinal?
It's weird to say, but I think when it comes for Sarah, the best expectations are no expectations. And really, I think that's coming in with a clear mind and a complete wiped memory of what's happened the last couple seasons at competition. Obviously she came up just short of qualifying for the games last year at Lowlands, and that's despite all the hiccups that we saw with the knee and all the uncertainties surrounding her injury. I've reached out to her camp and talked to him a little bit. She feels confident. She feels healthy for the first time in a long time. And I think if she's able to just go back out there and find the joy of competing, we'll get to see a little bit of that Sarah of old. And I think that's good enough to get to the games.
No one's going to be surprised if all the women we talked about here qualify, but who's a dark horse you're keeping an eye on?
It's weird to say that she's a dark horse, but I really think that, the fact that she doesn't have a CrossFit Games appearance under her belt makes Manon Angonese one of the athletes that I think could punch in as a quote unquote dark horse. Because really, if you look below the surface of not having a Games appearance, she has a ton of high level competition experience as an individual. Dubai, French Throwdowns, Lowlands, Italian Showdown, Madrid, the Rogue Invitational, most of those done during the sanctional season. And really, she kind of got robbed of a CrossFit Games appearance. In 2020, she was the national champ of Belgium, but that was the year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that all of those invites got rescinded. Last year, she was one of those athletes that got bit by the score submission issues and wasn't able to continue, but she's come back fired up, more focused than ever. She had the best finish at fourth in the quarterfinals for Europe, and I think she is poised to maybe make a push here.
11 women will be advancing from the Europe semifinal to the CrossFit Games. It's going to be week number 3. It's in Berlin, Germany, and can't wait to watch that go down. We will continue to break down the semifinals on our podcast, go a lot more in depth on some of the stuff that we talked about here. You can definitely check that out wherever you download your podcast. Follow us on Instagram, and if you see fit, you can support us on Patreon. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. We'll talk to you next time.